I feel like in the motorcycle community, buying a motorcycle just to be cool is kind of frowned upon. But if we all look a bit deeply into ourselves, it is something that we all kind of do. And I'm currently sitting on my Royal Enfield Interceptor, and I have to say, I honestly admit, I kind of am guilty of this. And I think if you buy a motorcycle purely on that basis, the Royal Enfield Interceptor could actually be the best bike for you. To kind of explain myself on this topic, let me tell you where I come from when it comes to motorcycling. I started motorcycling on a cheap bike from eBay that was very function over any kind of form. That is actually kind of my mantra and my motto, and that's also how I use my Interceptor mostly. When buying the Interceptor, I wanted to do a motorcycle surf trip back then and had that planned on a different bike, and that bike was not ready for it as it had too many mechanical flaws at that point, and I wanted something reliable and had at the time an offer for an Interceptor for $4,000, which was really good. And $4,000 was at the time a lot for me and still is. But then I was convinced after test riding the thing, and I think what in the end convinced me was that the bike made me feel cool. But I have to say, the reason in my head that I had for buying that bike, apart from subconsciously buying it because I thought I'm cool on the bike, that the bike is advertised with a motorcycle surf mount in one of the advertisements. And I thought it would be pretty easy on my motorcycle surf trip to justify that in front of a police officer if they pull me over for having a surfboard on a motorcycle. And then over the time of owning it, I kind of started to doubt the Interceptor. I had a time where I wanted to sell the bike actually. And that was because I rode different bikes that were in a similar price range when they were new, that had way more to offer basically, something like the Honda CB750 Hornet. And that's kind of the point where I then realized this kind of social proof and the perception of being cool, that is the appeal of this bike actually. Even though people maybe don't really want to talk about that much and don't want to admit to it really. And at the topic of that, even though people look down upon that, the bike does it really, really well. Like the Royal Enfield Interceptor truly is a motorcycle that kind of satisfies all your guilty hipster lusts that you have. Because I feel like British motorcycles are kind of the thing that people think of when they think of motorcycle riding in general. And this realization about the Royal Enfield Interceptor, that it's actually so good at giving this social proof, kind of hit me when looking repeatedly at the advertisement for this bike. Because even though it is filled with marketing bullshit, how every ad is, pretty much really hits the nail on the head when it comes to how it is to ride this motorcycle and how people perceive you riding this motorcycle. Like, you see all those people then with the fancy clothes riding the bike through the curves, the whole motorcycle with the surfboard on the side, on the beach, and I gotta say, even though it's of course here over-exaggerated, that kind of matches my experience when I drove the bike through small towns in France and was staying there for some time, and it really well transported the feeling you then actually have when sitting on the bike. I feel like other people don't care if you ride a motorcycle, because why should they? Like, when I sometimes tell people that I ride a bike, they often perceive me as a lunatic, you know? If you tell someone you ride a 600 Super Sport, most of the time you don't seem that sane in the conversation when you talk about it has so much acceleration, it's so cool. But with this bike, this kind of seems less dangerous. This seems like an acceptable form of motorcycle for many people who are not into bikes per se. When you first do your motorcycle license and want to buy a bike, you kind of have this image how it will be and how people will see you on that bike. No one will admit to this, but we all kind of have. And when it comes to people like actually recognizing that you ride a bike and thinking that it's cool, the Interceptor kind of does the best job on it. I pretty much have acknowledged at this point that like no one ever cared if I rode a bike, and no one ever will. But with the Interceptor it was kind of a different thing. I actually had people like speak to me in the supermarket that they recognized me from riding my Interceptor, which I think no bike has ever done that for me. And also the feeling of riding the bike yourself after going surfing in some small French town and then going to the local hip bar with your surfboard still on the side and a really nice like navy blue suit shirt. You feel like you're the guy in the Royal Enfield commercial, and it does transport this feeling very well. And I feel it's something that probably everyone experiences but no one really admits to. So That's why I'm making this video basically. And also the social proof that you get from the bike is amazing. Like, people actually want to talk to you about you riding a bike, which is something that usually never happens. And I realized that especially on my motorcycle surf trip, usually I did my surf trips in my VW Passat. Before I had a motorcycle YouTube channel, I was kind of into van life and stuff, but not in the van, in a car, because that's what I had. And every time I pulled up to a surf spot, everyone wanted to tell me about their stupid van, and I got so sick of it. And then I did this motorcycle surf trip basically to do the YouTube videos, and because I wanted to combine my passions and wanted to go surfing, like that kind of in the cock of stupid hipster shit at surf spots was basically the best thing you could do. Like, when doing the motorcycle surf trip, it was the first year that no one came up to me and wanted to tell me about their van build, which is impressive, because usually when I roll up to a surf spot on my Passat, I have like multiple guys wanting to tell me about their van build and wanting to be like, oh, I'm better than you. And with this bike, that never happened, because even though I did not intend to it kind of seems to win the hipster cock off. So even though no one was bothering me with whatever 15,000 euro van build with 600,000 kilometers on the clock they had, people were still looking and taking pictures of the motorcycle. So all in all, this is a motorcycle that gives you loads of attention. And of course, the feeling of being perceived as cool is kind of also cool when no one really does it and you're on your own. I think many people actually can think back to the scene, the opening scene of the Tron movie, where the main character drives through the cars on a vintage Ducati. And often when going home from somewhere and you're on this bike, that is kind of the feeling that you're getting, because you know you sit on a bike that looks cool driving through traffic, and it tends to feel basically like the opening scene of that movie. It is a really cool feeling, actually. Many people, I think, have the desire for being perceived as the cool guy on a motorbike. And this motorcycle really well gives you that. Also, not just on a motorcycle surf trip, also in all other areas. Like, I'm going in typical hipster fashion, actually, to the rock climbing gym and whatever with this bike. And it strikes up many nice conversations. And people really see you a bit, I feel like, as the guy similar to the guy in the Royal Enfield commercial. Of course, all in all, I don't think you should like completely buy a personality in a motorcycle, but partially we are all a bit guilty of this, and this bike definitely carries that quite a lot. And even though I can really well appreciate a cool looking motorcycle that gives you that sensation that I'm describing right now, in general, also all the positive cliches that are being associated with being a motorcycle rider kind of get associated with you if you ride the Royal Enfield Interceptor, in my experience. And it gives you a lot of social proof. All in all, this is a really weird phenomenon. I say many people desire this and want this, and this bike really delivers it. But let's be honest, I think this is completely fine, but in the end, it is a cosplay. It is kind of a dress-up. I mean, we're basically sitting on a completely fake bike here. We're sitting on a bike that looks like it's made from the 70s or 60s or 70s right now today. That is a lot heavier than the bikes from back then, and is dressed up to look like it has a carburetor, and with all the design cues and the materials and stuff all meant to look like from that era. Because I'm pretty sure that people basically desire what I just described. And I think that's okay. And if you are looking for that and can kind of tell yourself, yes, this is why I want to ride a motorcycle, I'm not judging, then the Royal Enfield Interceptor does that pretty much perfectly. It does it really, really well. Funnily enough, as soon as I desire actual motorcycle riding, I want something practical, I bring out all the big top cases that look hideous, because if you start putting something that then breaks that illusion on the bike, it's already completely over for me, and I get like the biggest, most practical suitcase I can even think of, and would love to put a windscreen as big as for a scooter on the thing. But all in all, the want of being seen as cool is kind of the main selling point of retro motorcycles, and I think it's okay to admit to that, and the Royal Enfield Interceptor basically does that best, if you really think about it. In the Royal Enfield commercial, people are not wearing any motorcycle gear, and in some of my footage I'm not wearing any gear when it was way too hot, and I did that even though I'm not supposed to. Please always wear your motorcycle gear. That is really important to me. And see you in the next one.